Good morning, everybody. You're all very welcome to EU Green Week 2020 and to this virtual workshop 1.4, which is in partnership with DG REGIO, and it is on business as unusual, financing nature with cohesion funds beyond 2020. I'm Karen Coleman. I'm a broadcaster and journalist from Ireland, and I'll be moderating this particular session this morning. We have a couple of housekeeping issues to get through before we introduce our speakers. So first of all, I want to go through those very quickly. For those of you who are watching us online, if you want to enlarge your screen showing this particular session, then click on the button with the 4 arrows going in different directions, which is at the bottom of the stage as you look at your screen. If you want to submit questions during our session, then the way you do this is you need to press the question mark, which is on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen as you look at it. We have a busy session, but we hope to be able to take some of your questions during the debate. And the speakers also have the option of actually answering your questions directly through the reply segment in the participants' question box. There's also a chat option, so that will enable you to chat with your fellow participants watching the same session, and you can do that through the Join Chat button on the left-hand side at the bottom of the stage screen. We also have polls, and we hope to run 1 or 2 polls during this morning's session, so keep an eye out from them. And you're going to hear me possibly call out to Agatha, who's working very hard behind the scenes from the European Commission, helping us through the morning as well. Now, can I just remind all of our speakers who will be participating this morning to please make sure your microphones are on mute unless I call out to you and unless you are speaking. So, let me tell you a little bit more about this morning's session. The theme is business as unusual, financing nature with cohesion funds beyond 2020. So, of course, as you know, the health of our economies depend considerably on the state of the natural environment, and protecting biodiversity provides a wide range of benefits. Cohesion policy has recognised these benefits by investing billions of euro into conserving nature and biodiversity over the years. And for the 2014 to 2020 period, it earmarked almost 4 billion euro for this purpose. And in the same vein, the objectives of the European Green Deal are also to protect, conserve, and enhance the EU's natural capacity. So in this workshop this morning, we're going to look at how cohesion funds could play a part within this new framework. We've 4 speakers. Each speaker will deliver a short presentation, and I will also put a question or two to the speakers, and we hope to take your own questions as well. You'll see now from our slide, we have 4 speakers. They are Joanna Drake from the European Commission's DG Environment, Sander Happarts from DG REGIO with the European Commission, Gabriel Mezang Encodo from the Slovenian Managing Authority of the Government Office for Development and European Cohesion Policy, and also Frank Stuba from the Flemish West Region Land Agency. So now, let's go to our first speaker. Joanna Drake is the Deputy Director General of the European Commission's Directorate General for Environment, and Joanna is going to set the stage, so to speak, in terms of the overall theme. Joanna, over to you now. You have 5 minutes in total.
Thank you very much, Karen, and good morning to all our viewers and the participants in this workshop. Time is very limited today, and there's so much to talk about, so I will really keep it short with 5 slides, and I'll go straight to the stage. Policy context. A quote from our President von der Leyen, who said recently when in one of her speeches that if we make nature healthy, then we physically and mentally are healthy. And of course, also nature needs to remain at the heart of our growth strategy. And that is what the European Green Deal is all about. It is part of the European recovery in a COVID and post-COVID scenario. So biodiversity is at the heart of the European Green Deal action plan. And the idea is to also put it together with other very flagship initiatives, like, for instance, the efficient use of resources and a circular economy, and also cutting pollution. I would just go straight to the next slide, where I have already described the framework. And there you will see that biodiversity sits very comfortably with the farm to fork strategies. Why? Because they have to mutually reinforce each other. They have to bring nature together with farmers, with businesses and consumers. What is the main aim behind the biodiversity strategy? Well, it is very ambitious, it is very far-reaching, but for the first time, it actually sets targets. And the strategy includes a commitment to protect 30% of the EU's land and sea by 2030. This 10-year plan already includes a pledge to reduce the use of chemical pesticides by 50%, to plant 3 billion trees by 2030, and to reverse the decline in pollinators. Next year, we will be actually legislating on these binding targets. There is, of course, the farm to fork strategy, whose main goal is a transition to sustainable food system and aims to transform our food system and make it sustainable from all the elements, from the food chain, from production, the processing, wholesale, retail, up to the consumption. We also have a communication on the recovery package, which actually refers to the importance of protecting and restoring biodiversity. We also have the nature legislation, which actually complements the Green Deal. The nature legislation has been there for a number of years, decades, I would say, but of course we still have significant gaps in implementation, and therefore enforcement is also a very important flagship, not initiative, I would say, a reinforcement of action in the Green Deal. If I go to the next slide, we are talking here about nature, and of course, there's also an argument to be made regarding the business case. Why did I say it's part of our growth strategy? Well, I would keep these simple figures in mind. More than half of the global GDP, some 40 trillion euros, depends on nature. This is coming out from a report from the World Economic Forum, which has revealed that more than half of the world's total GDP is actually dependent on nature and its services. So its key economic sectors, for instance, construction, agriculture, and food and drink, are all highly dependent on nature, as they generate more than 7 trillion euros. Of course, therefore, there are benefits for nature financing. And the business case, therefore, for biodiversity is very compelling. I'll just give one example in the interest of time. Conserving marine stocks could increase annual profits of the seafood industry by more than 49 billion euros. Protecting coastal wetlands could save the insurance industry around 50 billion euros annually through reducing flood damage losses. And of course, if we look at the Natura 2000 nature protection network, it's the value of this, the benefits of the Natura 2000 network is valued between 200 and 300 billion per year. Of course, this means a lot of job creation in the green jobs sector. I will go to the next slide. There is of course nature funding which is being proposed between 2021 and 2027. The calculation of the investment needs is about 20 billion euros a year, and this should be unlocked for spending on nature. These costs are, of course, greatly outweighed by the benefits provided by the services of ecosystems and the services that these provide to our economies and societies. If we compare this to the 2014 to 2020 expenditure, this 20 billion euros a year for future nature investment needs, comparing to the 2014-2020 programming period, well, we have a few reflections here. Total biodiversity-related expenditure in the present EU budget was estimated through the REO markers at around 13 to 14 billion euros a year, representing only about 8 to 9% of the overall EU budget. With national co-financing and also further national sources, the total annual funding in the current practice is closer to the 20 billion. However, we have to be very careful with these figures because they do not only include direct investments, but also represent a broad aggregation of targeted investments and funding, which is indirectly relevant for nature and biodiversity, such as, for instance, the contribution from wastewater treatment or pollution control towards biodiversity goals. Therefore, however, only about 3 billion euros a year can be considered as direct biodiversity expenditure. And of course, between the 3 and 20 billion, I think the significant financial gap is pretty obvious. Last slide. Just a few examples there to sort of whet your appetite about nature investment priorities, which have already taken place and which serve also as very good best practices that could be taken up because they are replicable. There are projects which are tackling biodiversity loss and restoring ecosystems, which will require a lot, of course, public and private investment at both national and European level, as well as capacity building. This slide only shows some examples of nature investment priorities which are heavily influenced by the new biodiversity strategy. They range from actions to ensure a fully functional network of the Natura 2000 sites through restoration work, through promotion of green and blue spaces also in urban areas. Of course, the success of all these actions will depend to a large degree on how far we are able to translate these broad investment priorities into actual reforms and projects in the member states. And I would like to recall that member states are, as we speak now, in the process of finalizing the so-called prioritized action frameworks, the PAFs, as we call them internally here, that should help in this task. And of course, we are there to guide member states and to help them and give advice as to which way they would be serving their own commitments and also the commitments, the European commitments at the European level for the Green Deal.
Thank you very much, Joanna, and thank you for sticking to the time. And indeed, if you do have questions for Joanna, please do put them into the participants' questions box there. Now, let's move on to our next speaker. Sanda Apharts is a policy analyst in the Smart and Sustainable Growth Department with DG REGIO from the European Commission. And Sander is going to speak about financing nature with cohesion funds in 2014 to 2020. Sander, over to you, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Karen. Hello to everyone. I'm very happy to be a guest again at the Green Week, although with this year's being it fully virtual, it comes with a few challenges like having the future generations on my lap. But indeed, I will speak to you about cohesion policy in the current period, but also with a few comments about the next period. And assuming that's not all of you know all the details, cohesion policy is the biggest investment policy of the EU. It spends about 1/3 of the EU budget in investments in all EU regions. And a few numbers have been quoted already. Of course, these numbers, they continue to change because this policy is under shared management. It's member states who manage the funds, and they sometimes shift funds between priorities as well. So this means that in the current period, with the latest numbers I have, there is about 2.8 billion of direct investments in nature and biodiversity, but counting also the indirect investments, for instance, in water treatment, climate change adaptation, it comes to about 11 billion euros of investments relevant for nature and biodiversity. This includes also the Interreg programs for cross-border and transnational cooperation. Now, Joanna gave an excellent introduction about the European Green Deal, which is really, as she said, the new EU growth strategy. And in this strategy, cohesion policy funds will play quite an important role because we want to make sure that all regions benefit from the transition to a climate neutral and circular economy. And with cohesion policy funds, we will do a number of things. We will invest in place-based innovation, because it's a bottom-up policy. It always starts from local priorities and local strengths. But we will also spend funds to deploy all the innovative solutions, not only technological, but also social on a large scale across Europe. We will help regions phase out of unsustainable practices like carbon-intensive industry by reskilling their workers, and reorientating their economy. And in the future, we will place an even bigger emphasis on having a just transition so that no region is left behind. This is why in the future, we will add the Just Transition Fund to cohesion policy. And in the future proposals, these are still under discussion by the Parliament and the Council. We have 5 main policy objectives, one of which is a greener, low-carbon Europe. And it is likely, but the discussions have not reached an agreement yet, it is likely that this second policy objective will be mandatory for all member states with at least 30% of the European Regional Development Fund. This is the biggest of the funds to be placed in there. And this second policy objective has a number of specific objectives, one of which you can see here on the slide, which is enhancing biodiversity, green infrastructure in the urban environment, and reducing pollution. So with these direct investments in that specific objective, we hope to contribute to the biodiversity strategy by bringing nature back to our cities and by protecting and strengthening the Natura 2000 network. But this is not the only thing that we will do for nature, as in the current period, but even more so in the future period. We really hope that member states and regions use nature-based solutions across the board, so across all their investments, including investments in regenerating city centers, in energy efficiency, in flood protection, to really use, where possible, nature-based solutions, so that we really take full benefit of the ecosystem services of nature, but also strengthen them. And by the way, when they use such nature-based solutions, this will be something that will not be fully visible in the numbers or the allocations, because they may be marked as energy efficient investments, for instance, but they can include, hopefully, green roofs, green walls. So this is really a responsibility of the member states. And I turn to my last slide. This was the last slide. In fact, what I wanted to say is that although the proposals are still being negotiated by the Council and the Parliament, the Commission has actually already started preparing with member states the programs, which will decide where the priorities are in each of the regions and how they will be spent. So these programming discussions are already ongoing between the Commission and the different member states and regions. If you would like to get involved in this, I would encourage you to get in touch with the authorities that manage these funds in your member state or region, because it's not something fully decided in Brussels. It's really a local. So get in touch with them, make your voice heard, get your priorities in the programs so that we can make the best use of the funds in the future. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you so much for that excellent presentation, and to your lovely companion who behaved really, really well throughout this. So thank you very much for that. And I think you gave us a lot of points there and food for thought. Before we move on to our next 2 speakers, maybe I can pick up on sort of the central theme here and put a question to you both, and to you first, Joanna, a question here. So from your perspective, do you think, will it be business as usual or unusual for nature financing in the next financial perspective? Joanna, over to you for your answer on that.
Thank you very much, Karen. Well, let's start from the fact that we are living in very unusual times. I don't think anybody can deny that. But of course, our priority is to recover from not only the economic crisis, but also the health crisis, which is, I would say, taking precedence even over the economy. But in doing so, in recovering, we have to ensure that we are in keeping with the objectives, with the ambitions of the Green Deal. Why? Because of, including, of course, the biodiversity strategy. Why am I saying this? Because at the end of the day, what we want, I think what has actually been exposed in all this crisis is the fragility. You know, as our president said, a virus which is like 1,000 times smaller than a grain of sand has actually exposed the fragility of not only our health and our life and our economies, but also of the planet. So I think this is our challenge. Now, what is the risk in this? The risk is that we try to get a quick fix. I think this is very natural for us to go in that direction. But I think what we need to do is resist that and work towards resilience for a longer term recovery. So on the one hand, we have to ensure that we invest the available nature funds in the right places and in the right way. As I said earlier, with the strategic tools that the member states have in their hands right now, and in which, of course, we are also helping to guide. But we also need to find additional funding. So the first challenge is to really invest in the long-term resilient projects that are respecting the biodiversity, that are respecting the Green Deal, are respecting the climate ambitions that we have. But we also need to find additional funding. So, of course, the more challenging is to make sure that our other economic activities, so whether we're talking about infrastructure project, construction, production of food supplies, value chains, etc., those other investments, even if necessary, need to ensure that they do not have any significant harm on the environment. And I think this is, again, the real challenge. So it's not only about finding the investments and the money, and this, which is already a challenge, and channeling them to the right type of investments, green type of investments, but also ensuring that other types of investments, which cannot be described as green, but must also respect a priori that they do not have any significant harm on nature. And I think what we need to do now, and which what currently as Commission are working on as well, is to operationalize this principle into tangible and measurable criteria.
Hey, Joanna, very, very good. Thank you very much for that. Very interesting points that you have been making there. Sander, perhaps we can get your views as well. Same question, really. Is it going to be business as usual or unusual for nature financing in the next financial perspective?
Well, Karen, I really hope that it will not be business as usual. It can't really be business as usual. But as I said, this is not really fully in the hands of the Commission. We put our proposals forward. They are being negotiated now. And since we are a shared management policy, many of the decisions on how it will be implemented are really happening at national and regional level. This is why I want to say to all of those who manage the funds think about your biodiversity investments, but not only think of those direct investments. Really think of all the investments that you are doing, and we will again have close to 400 billion to spend of EU funds alone. So I would say use nature-based solutions wherever you can, and ask our help if you need help with that. And in all the rest, do no harm.
Thank you very much, Sander, for that. We actually have a couple of questions already coming in from our participants, and thank you very much for that. We have a couple of more minutes. So, Joanna, maybe I can put one back to you and I'll read it out. It's from Magnus Vessel. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Magnus. Thank you for your question. Magnus wants to know, how do the structure and mechanisms of the future Cohesion Fund prevent environmentally harmful subsidies beyond the normal legal framework applying to all individual projects, which did not help enough due to a lack of implementation? Joanna, I wonder, would you mind taking that question from Magnus, please?
As I said earlier, of course, business cannot be as usual. And this is what also is the case for cohesion funds, which, of course, has already been presented here. I think the do no significant harm is going to assume really protagonist importance, I would say, and in horizontal ways. So I would say that the criteria that will be developed within the Commission are going to be applicable across the board and need to be deployed in order to assess all the different projects that will be proposed. So this is why we have always worked very closely with our colleagues in DG REGIO in this regard, in order to ensure that this does the impact on environment will not be neither significant and, if possible, not at all. So a harmful impact has to be avoided at all costs. And we have always found ways of how to avoid this. Of course, in collaboration with our collaborators, also in the member states.
Joanna, thank you very much for that. We also have a very good question, which I think could potentially be for you, Sander. And it's from Elia, I think, Newdecker. Infrastructure investment and protection of biodiversity are very often at odds. We have the requirements for environmental impact assessment already in place. How will this be integrated into cohesion funding so we can get real green infrastructure? Sander, perhaps you can answer that question.
Thank you very much. I will be short, but I will address both questions because when it comes to environmentally harmful subsidies, there is usually not a lot that is legally excluded from cohesion policy, but in this period, we have really made a larger list of things that would be absolutely excluded from investments. And this contains, for instance, all investments related to fossil fuels, disposal of waste in landfills, treatment of residual waste. But this list is now being negotiated by Council and Parliament, and we don't know if those things will remain on that exclusion list. Then when it comes to specific projects, the Environmental Impact Assessment Directive is fully applicable to all investments, no matter when they are funded by the EU or not. So it's a responsibility of member states to integrate that also into their cohesion policy projects. The cohesion policy projects are not selected, not managed by the Commission, but by member states and regions. There, we really also hope that member states will integrate sustainability in their project selection criteria, and they are fully responsible to do so. There has been a study quite recently done by DG Environment, the colleagues who are organizing this workshop, on integrating sustainability in project selection criteria. We will continue to push member states to use those best practices. But as I said, it's really up to them to integrate it, and we can only hope that they take it to heart. Over to you, Karen.
Thanks very much, Sander, and thanks again to your lovely companion there who's doing a great job. Now, let's just run a quick poll before we move on to our next two speakers. And I'm going to call on Agatha now to show us the poll and the poll question. Here we go. So this is for all of you to answer. Please do so now. By what percentage do you think has the global population of wild species fallen over the last 40 years? So we'll run that for about the next 30 seconds, and then I'll give you the answer to that. So we're still running. And at the moment, we have one saying 60%, two saying 40%, and three saying 20%. So let me just very quickly, again, our poll question is, by what percentage has the global population of wild species fallen over the last 40 years? Is it by 60%? Is it by 40%? Or is it by 20%? And we're nearly at the end of our poll. And so far, the majority are saying it's 60 and 36% are saying 40. And okay, so we will send the results. And here we go with the results. So 60% have said, the first, at least, number one is 60%, and number two is 40%, and number three is 20%. And I can tell you that, yes, as a result of unsustainable human activities, the global population of wild species has fallen by 40% over the last 40 years. That's about 1 million species now are at risk of extinction within decades. And the main drivers of this loss are the conversion of natural habitats into agricultural land and the expansion of urban areas. Other causes, by the way, include the overexploitation of natural resources such as overfishing and destructive farming practices, along with climate change, pollution, and invasive alien species. And thank you for participating in the poll. We will still be hopefully able to take some of your questions as well to our speakers during the next segment. So do bear that in mind. Please continue to submit your questions. Now, we'll move on to our next two panelists. And the first presentation is going to be about financing nature with cohesion funds beyond 2020. And then the second presentation is on establishing biodiversity aims through Interreg. So again, as I said, you can submit questions to our speakers during this period as well. And you do so by pressing the question mark on the button on the right-hand side of your screen. So I'd now like to introduce our next speaker. Gabrielle Mzang-Nkodo is the Cohesion Policy Officer of the Funds Unit at the Government Office for Development and European Cohesion Policy Managing Authority in Slovenia. And Gabrielle is going to address the topic Financing Nature with Cohesion Funds Beyond 2020. Gabrielle, over to you. The virtual floor is yours. You have 6 minutes in total. Thank you. So, Gabrielle, maybe you need to unmute your mic, and I will hand over to you again now. And if you could unmute your mic for us, please. Thank you.
Okay, it's done. Thank you very much, Karin. Thank you very much also for all the people who are here with us. We are participating to this event. Well, I will start with, let's say, a fact. I'm sure that many of you already know that the Natura 2000 network in Slovenia covers 38% of the territory. This is a great opportunity for us, and at the same time, I will say it is a huge responsibility. Well, how are we dealing with this opportunity? I will say that, in a few words, what is the managing structure of our cohesion policy implementation in Slovenia? We have three main bodies, as you can see in this chart. And with the managing authority, of course, which is responsible for the efficient management of operational program. And we have audit authority and certifying body, as many other countries has. And what is important here is that we have 10 ministries which are, let's say, responsible for the delegated tasks from the managing authority, which are 10 ministries acting as implementing body, and of course preparing projects and so forth with the beneficiaries. What is maybe in the next slide, we'll see what is, how do we select, let's say, a biodiversity project in Slovenia. I will say that we have, let's say, two main legal, or I would say legal basic. It concerns two main documents. The first one is a national environmental protection program, and the second one, which is a strategic document, which is very important for us, is the Natura 2000 management program for the period 2015-20, which have, let's say, a list which includes a list of 22 priority Natura 2000 projects, which are already, I will say, a base for the next procedure at the intermediate body and also at the managing authority. And here, what is important for us, the selection criteria and the procedure we use is, as a procedure, we use a direct approval, which is, of course, makes sense because we have already identified the, let's say, the priority projects. And then also we use the managing authority and also the intermediate bodies use the so-called document, guidance, which were issued by the managing authority with some selection and eligibility criteria, which are, of course, required for each project. And then moving forward, some words about, let's say, the lesson learned in 2014, 2020. I think that the most important for us, or what we did, and the most the first, or I would say, an advantage for us was that we have already identified 22 priority projects, which facilitate the procedure later on. And the beneficiaries are concentrating on the preparation of these projects. And also we have introduced a specific investment priority in the operational program, which is also easiest for everybody. And of course, as I said before, we use the direct approval instead of call of proposals. And we support, I would say, 100% of projects or eligible cost of all projects, which is also easier for, let's say, for the beneficiaries. And then what may be more, I would say, negative, if I could say, in the 2014-20, is that we have, let's say, complex general rules, because maybe our rules are more adapted for classic investment. In this use, let's say, very hard, or let's say a little bit tough for beneficiaries. But also we had a large number of, let's say, partnerships, larger number of beneficiaries we are dealing with the projects, which also means, in other words, the time-consuming, demanding coordination for projects. And then I will, the two next slides, I will try to concentrate in some example of best practice. The first one will be the renewal on the conservation of wetland habitats in the area of Ljubljansko-Barje. This is a project where six partners are involved. 4 million euros is the total cost of this project. And what is important, the objectives of this project, overall objectives was the establishment, improvement, maintenance of favorable status of habitat types and species in this area. And has key outputs for this project. What we see also very positive is the proper land management of the areas concerned here, and also, of course, supplementation and reintroduction of certain species, and at the end also an improved quality of the habitat types. I will move. This is, I will say, photo speaking about, presenting about the outputs of this project. And I will next move to the next example of best practice, life integrated project for environmental management of Slovenia, which is a very complex project. And as you see, this project maybe involved, I would say, 17 stakeholders working together, and 17 million of projects, total cost of the project 70 million euro. And I will say the main objectives of these very nice projects for us is an improved conservation of status of selected species and habitats types from the Slovenia, from the Natura 2000 management program, and enhanced management of Natura 2005. And I will say here, we would like also to, with this project, to strengthen the capacity of stakeholders, improve the knowledge on species and habitat types and sites. What is important regarding this project, it is multi-sectoral coordination management projects, because here we are touching some areas as agriculture, forestry, water management, And of course, it will be also a base for the concrete activities within 2000 sites, and also preparation for the new management program for 2021, 2027. And to end with this short presentation, I will just use this slogan we use many times. Let us continue bringing Naturebased into our lives and thus contribute to the implementation of the Green Deal Action Plan. Thank you very much. Karen can take over.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you very much. That was great, and some great insights too. Just a quick question for you, if I may, Gabriel. You've been working on EU cohesion funding now in Slovenia for several years, as you say. What do you think will be the main challenges then and the opportunities in terms of financing nature during the 2021 to 2027 period? Over to you, Gabriel.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, good question. Actually, yes, we are thinking a lot about the new period. We know that we'll have new challenges, I can say, because it will really be a business and as unusual, unusual business. Well, for the 2021 and 2027, our challenges we are seeing here is how to provide more green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. This is something we are working on and very hard. And also, we would like to strengthen the multi-sectoral approach for nature investment. Here, I have in mind that we like, now we are also start talking between the preparation of projects where there will be two main ministry involved, which is the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Transport. And of course, we will also like to have a more efficient use of EU financial mechanism. Has opportunities, as I say, maybe we are, I would say we are lucky because we have already identified some priority projects, which mean that in the next period, we would like to further implement these identified projects, using, of course, our experience from 2014, 2020. And of course, we'll also like, which is a big wish, financing of projects by combining, I would say, LIFE and ERDF funds. This is something which is foreseen, and of course, I'm sure that we'll be able to do it.
Great. Gabriel, for that. Thank you so much. By the way, if you're just joining us, you're very welcome, and a big welcome to EU Green Week 2020 and to this workshop, which is on business as unusual, financing nature with cohesion funds beyond 2020. I'm Karen Coleman, a journalist and broadcaster from Ireland. Now, let's move on to our final speaker. Frank Stube is the head of Agri-Environment Schemes with the West Region Flemish Land Agency in Belgium. And Frank is going to speak on the topic, Establishing Biodiversity Aims through Interreg. So over to you, Frank.
Thank you, Karen. I hope you all hear me loud and clear. Good morning, everyone. I will bring here two projects where we got funding from Interreg North Sea region, where we work together with a lot of stakeholders, with nature conservationists, with researchers, with advisors, and also managing authorities, where we want to enhance biodiversity on different places. So I hope you see both the two logos. We work on two projects. It's the first is about bees, and the other is about birds, especially on the partridge, an arable bird. And so how we work in the Bespoke project. Bespoke, that's the name says itself. It's about increasing the level of pollination and crop pollination at local, at landscape scales by providing land managers and policymakers new expertise, tools, and financial knowledge to create a more sustainable and resilient agro-ecosystem. So we work on 9 different topics together. So we provide training and knowledge. This is developed by the partnership across the North Sea region. We try to improve the plans for existing habitats on the ground. We introduce new targeted seed mixtures. It's very important to have the right seed mixtures on the ground. We demonstrate on different places best practices. We also define economic gains because pollination has a very big impact on economic. We also try to let farmers know how they can measure their pollination, and by evidence. We identify flower area needed and also regions where it is important to do or to implement a better habitat. So what we do together with all the regions is that we exchange or try to expertise between the partnerships, between the partners of the partnerships. So we developed the right seed mixes, taking into account the different ecotypes. And we also, within the expertise from different research organizations, to have the right habitat management. We have across the North Sea region 72 demo sites and experimental farms. So we go to the farms and explain why and how it could be improved, the pollination on the ground. We let farmers come. We do farm exchange where we explain to a farmer what he should do or improve to enhance the pollination at local level. We also develop project guides. We start measuring crop pollination on different places, on different crops, fruit, field beans, rapeseed, cherries, strawberries, in fact, 14 crop types. So we hope that yield is increasing, but also even important is that we work at landscape level because we need to enhance and to make landscape more robust across Europe. So everyone knows the problems that we have nowadays. So we need to have a better quality of landscape at a bigger level. So this was the first project. This was bespoke. And the other project we work together is about Partridge. This is in fact a flagship species, but it's about a lot more than this only one species. We work on improving insects. We work on improving songbirds, also hares. Our ambition is that we enhance biodiversity by 30% at 10 demo sites across Europe by 2023. And we demonstrate that on the different sites. We have sites in Scotland, in England, in Belgium, in Flanders, also in the Netherlands and in Germany, where we enhance with different measures. And it's we have in each demo site, we have at least 7% of measures. Mostly we have 10 or even more measures with different seed mixtures. So we follow up and monitor the results. So to enhance or to work together through Interreg, we work on different topics. We work on habitat management. The partnership has developed, tested and implemented guidelines for the right habitat management through expert exchange on the ground. We go on the ground and look what works in Göttingen, what works in the Netherlands and Flanders, and we exchange between experts how what is working there and what should we improve in our region to have better results. And we do farm exchange. Farmers go to different places where they can see the results, and by seeing something you can convince a farmer and you create a kind of trust and proudness that they can be involved in such an interesting moment to introduce them new measures on to implement them in their own region. And communication is very important because we have to do a lot of communication, because in the different demo sites we have 10% of measures. It wasn't easy to reach, but we do have it. And we see we enhance already a lot the biodiversity. On songbirds, on insects, we have a lot of more insects on our places, and this is the start to enhance biodiversity for the bird, etc. So we need to convince local stakeholders, national and even international. We invited already the Commissioner, Agriculture, the former Agriculture Commission, to come to our demo site in the Netherlands, where he could see how we enhanced biodiversity. We work a lot on awareness training, national and international. And monitoring is, of course, very important. And we should prove that our way of working has the results we aim to, namely 30% enhancement of biodiversity. So the ambition of our project is also to evaluate in the different states across North Sea region the agri-environmental schemes. We evaluate them and look and analyze what should be changed and could be made better. We involve the right organizations to discuss with them. A very important topic is also the motivation and the trust that we need on the stakeholders on the ground to work together with us. We have a lot of farmers working together because we see and we hear that agriculture is one of the main things we have to change, and we see it's not only the money and the rules, but the most important is to build trust with the farmer so that he can do something and that he believes in it and that he can have a kind of local produced food that he can sell related to his biodiversity things he has done. And it should also look at the ease of implementation between the regions is also very relevant to think about. It should be easy to implement for a farmer, and he should be proud of it. And we try to create a sort of proudness between the different farmers that work with us together. So for us to conclude, it's very relevant to have cohesion or Interreg money to exchange, to work together between regions, because a lot of things we do is paid by CAP money, by Pillar 2, agri-environmental schemes. But cohesion money is for us a kind of seed money, also to introduce new things that could be implemented in new IAS schemes for the future in the different member states. So I think and I hope that we will have the possibility in the future to have more opportunities to have cohesion money, because working on biodiversity is also working on cohesion between member states. I think
Okay, that's great, Frank. Thank you very much for that. We need to move on because we're running out of time. Just a very quick question to you, Frank, and very interesting to hear about those two projects. But what's the added value, do you think, of cohesion funds in terms of enhancing biodiversity? Very quick response, if you wouldn't mind. Over to you, Frank.
Learning from each other is the most important thing, that we learn from others, from researchers, and to involve all stakeholders, that they work together to a common aim across regions. This is building a house. You start with a stone, but with a project you build a house. And I think that's the most important. Over to you, Karen, I hope.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Frank. We just have 1 or 2 minutes left to maybe tackle 1 or 2 questions that have been coming in. From Richard Tufts, and hello to you, Richard, wants to know the 2 main funding objectives of cohesion are smarter and greener growth. How should we place green strategies within smart specialization strategies, hence moving from S3 to S4? Sander, I think that's an appropriate question for you. Would you mind taking Richard's question, please?
Yes, thank you, Karen, and thank you, Richard. It's a super important question. Smart specialization strategies are the strategies that regions develop to channel their cohesion policy funding to the innovation side of the policy, and we are seeing an increasing interest in green priorities there, but it can be strengthened further. This is, of course, again, mostly a regional responsibility, but we are working also on this. I would be happy to discuss it further with you as well. Just to already let you know that in REGIO we are developing a toolkit for sustainability transitions, which will also look at this innovation angle. Karen?
Okay, thank you very much, Sander. The second question that we had might also be for you, but I might try and see if we have time to get reaction from the other panelists. I believe, and it's from Ezra Alagos Kaya. Hope I've pronounced your name correctly, Ezra. Thank you for your question. It's, I believe we need to reduce the existing pollution produced by industry. Very good question. What actions can we take so that industrial parks adopt nature-based solutions? Maybe quick one from you, Sander, and I might also ask Frank for his reaction. Over to you, Sander, on that.
Okay, I'll be very short. Just to let you know that there has been, in fact, another Interreg project. It's called 2B Connect. Google it or let us know if you can't find it, from the Interreg program Flanders and the Netherlands, which was exactly on this, how to bring nature to industry parks. This illustrates that for all the problems that you may face, there are probably solutions somewhere in Europe. And this allows me to say that both DG Environment and DG REGIO have specific tools, peer-to-peer tools, to help you get that knowledge to your region. So also for that, get in touch with us so we can channel you to the correct mechanisms for support.
Okay, thanks very much, Sander. I think your young son is determined to play a role in shaping the future of financing of nature. It's great to see such enthusiasm so early in the morning. I might go back for some reaction later to anybody else, but we are really we only have a few minutes left, and we do want to run our second poll. So let's do that first and see what time we have left. So Agatha, if you can please pull up our second poll. And if you please, for those of you watching us online, if you could reply to it and participate, that would be great. So our poll question is, how many trees are to be planted across Europe by 2030 as part of the EU biodiversity strategy? So is it number one option, at least 15 billion? Is it at least 100 billion, which is the second option? Or the third option, is it at least 3 billion? So we'll give you a minute or so to answer that poll question. And thank you again for participating in this. So how many trees are to be planted across Europe by 2030 as part of the EU biodiversity strategy? Is it number one, at least 15 billion? Is it number two, at least 100 billion? Or is it number three, at least 3 billion? We'll just give another 20 or so seconds and we'll see what the majority of you have voted for. So the results are 50% say 3, 29% say 1, and 21% say 7. Thank you so much for participating, and I can tell you that the objective is to plant 3 billion additional trees in the EU by 2030. That will apparently double the current trend. So I think really we're coming to the end of our time. We have about a minute left. Maybe very quickly, Frank Stuba, I can go back to you for your response there to the earlier question that came from one of our participants, if you are still there. Frank, can you answer that question, or if you're gone, or just final thoughts perhaps on what has been said this morning? Over to you, Frank.
About the question, for me, I think also at European level, there should be more cooperation between DG Agri and DG Environment, because if you look at the integration we do on the ground, this is very important that we work together with CAP money and cohesion money, so we could enhance biodiversity by both pillars of the European funding pillars, so that we reach better our biodiversity targets. And this is a real aim, because when we go to our national authorities about Interreg, they always say CAP money. If it's CAP money, it's difficult to have funding for cohesion.
Okay. Frank, super. Thank you so much as well for answering that question so briefly. A big thanks first to all of our panelists participating in this online session, including Sandra's wonderful young son who contributed so greatly this morning. A big thanks to you, but big thanks to Joanna Drake, to Sander Happarts, to Gabrielle Mazangan Kodo, and to you, Frank Stuba. And a big thanks to all of the organisers of this morning's session, to the teamwork and everybody else who's been working so far hard behind the scenes. And thank you to all of you who've watched us online. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the Green Week and hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.